Hello and welcome to my description of my Kundalini experience. My name's Emma and I'm going to talk you through something that is almost beyond description. It is somewhat like giving birth, in fact. It is giving birth to a new self through the body, mind, and soul. In fact, it's a rebirth of the body, mind, and soul. My own experience has been going on for many years, and it's been going on concurrently with my experience of motherhood. And like many people, I find it hard to identify what began the Kundalini activation. And I didn't really have any idea it was going on. I just knew that I was going completely crazy until the Kundalini reached my throat chakra. So it was well along the path before I even knew what was going on in my body. So how can I describe it? Usually what happens with Kundalini is that somebody goes through an awakening. They see the matrix of the world around us that's been created around us, the falsity of the way many of us are living, and the unsustainable way that many of us are living. And I don't mean just in an environmental way, although that is definitely a part of it. I mean in a soul way as well, living an unfulfilled life, living an unfulfilled inner life, an unfulfilled community life, and an unfulfilled environmental life, meaning we're taking so much more than we're giving back to the planet. And usually it's sort of like the curtains are parted and people have these watershed moments where they have these great realizations and they see nature for all of its beauty and wonder. They see people for all of their beauty and wonder. You know, we are so beautiful. It still makes me cry just to say that. And what starts happening is a process of cleansing. So this cleansing starts in the root chakra and it goes through each chakra, and the cleansing is spiritual, physical, and emotional. So any stored emotional baggage that you have in each of those chakras will come to the surface to be addressed and to be faced. And also a lot of our emotions manifest physically. So of course physical things happen to us as well. And as each chakra is cleared, the energy moves on to the next chakra bit by bit. And each chakra, as we know, is represented by a frequency of color and can be helped to heal by those frequencies of color. And that's why people can really benefit whilst they're going through Kundalini to have things like crystal bed healing, which pulses the corresponding frequency of each color to each chakra. Also, acupuncture helped me tremendously because a lot of the blocks are completely physical in your body and you can feel them. And you can feel the energy trying to get through. Even now, I know I've got a block in the back of my heart chakra. Don't know where it came from, but there it is, and it is painful. So I will go and get some acupuncture for that very soon. Now, these things can be moved energetically as well. If you have a good energy healer, they will be able to identify these issues and they'll be able to help ease them. But the work has to be done yourself, and you're kidding yourself if you think that you can get through this process without doing any work on yourself. So most people have already begun that process and are already doing work on themselves. And so that's what happened to me. I just started, first of all, I can't identify which bit began it, but I definitely started cleansing my physical body. That was very important to me. I realized that I was ill and it was very necessary that I cleanse my physical body. I'd been dealing with ongoing years of effects of irritable bowel syndrome, really difficult gut stuff. And so I took my diet right back and I started eating raw food, and I ate raw food for a year and eventually got to winter and found that I really needed to have a soup and something cooked. I also became a vegetarian. I cut right back on dairy, and I became extremely conscious about everything that I was eating and drinking. I also only started to put living water in my body. So I ceased to drink water from the tap, no more fluoride for me, and only living water in my body. I got spring water from the Blue Mountains sent to our house. So that was the beginning, and then I became very interested in a spiritual attitude to life. I became awestruck. First of all, I also ceased social media. I switched off for 5 years. I still had my phone, but I rarely sent text messages, and I had Message Bank on my home phone. And I didn't even give out my mobile number for all of that time. Some friends still had it, but, to stores and, memberships, and none of that. I just gave them my landline. So that was just taken away, and it was beautiful, like that sense of freedom. I might do it again, actually, because the sense of freedom is just so unparalleled, and that lack of sort of that anxiety of connection is not there. And so you are free, and you're free to look around. And what I noticed was nature, Mother Nature, and I noticed just this resplendent beauty everywhere. Fungi, after a rain. Oh my gosh, it's one of the most outstanding things. If you're in a forest after rain, fungi is just like a light. It is just so amazing. It is grabbing your attention. It stands out. And so I researched fungi and just became enamored of people who were working. Mycology became just, amazing to me. These networks of fungi and spores growing under the ground and decomposing Mother Nature, and the different traditions of, reishi, and just learning all about the incredible work that people are doing with fungi, and, even biodegrading radioactive waste in Fukushima. Like, there's an amazing world out there just going on just with fungi. Then I began to learn about edible plants in my world in Australia that I could eat, and I began to become really familiar with nature and what she is and who she is. And I started to talk to the plants because they were there. And at the time I was going through a very quite lonely phase. I was one of the first people in my group of friends in Sydney to have a child, and so that was a very internal process because nobody else I knew had a kid. And so I was walking around, spending a lot of time in nature, feeling quite lonely, which led me to go in and find that sort of find friendship within. And also I became conscious of the plants and found friends without and all around me. And I also learned about plant spirit consciousness and became fascinated by people who had discovered that plants react, to electric stimulation and to the effects of their environment. And so Cleve Baxter, but also before him, Jovendra Boshe, who was an Indian academic but lived and worked in London as well. And that took me to Findhorn, the spiritual eco-village in far north Scotland, because the people at Findhorn became very famous in the 1960s and 70s because they worked with the spirit consciousness of each plant. And they used the information that spirit consciousness shared with them to grow bigger, healthy plants. And they grew huge, enormous vegetables. And at the same time, I read an NDE. So I began reading the NDEs, which also sort of blew open my consciousness. Because although each of them are totally different, if you read a huge amount of them, which is what I did, you began to see similarities in this spiritual information that people are giving. Once they cross over, their body here is dead, but there's an amount of time that their body can be dead and their spirit can be out of it before, what am I trying to say? Their body can be dead for a certain amount of time, and it's able to take back the spirit. But so a lot of people have a choice whether or not to re-enter their body, but they're shown things on the other side. And one of the things this man was shown, he's an atheist, Reverend Howard Storm is a reverend now, but he was an atheist then. He was shown an ideal future on the planet, and the ideal future had virtually no technology. People were just using the technology of their bodies and the environment. And people were doing they were gardening and farming, but with virtually no effort. They were merely meditating and sending good energy to the plants, which would grow to be huge. And so instead of having 24 cauliflowers, they just had one big one. And so, farming it was not a problem. Food was abundant. There was just no issue. And this sounded like, paradise. And the other thing that happened was apparently in this ideal future, all that anyone did was look after children. So children were given this huge value, and everyone put all of the energy that they had into looking after children. So if you can conceive of the energy that goes into building a bridge, for example, the engineers, structural engineers, the location, building the foundations, prepping the metal, all of the massive amounts of energy that go into building a bridge, all of that energy is being put into children in this ideal future. And so this sort of stimulated a lot of I was just sort of like, well, if this is an ideal future, how can we make this? So I wanted to travel to Findhorn, and I did, to learn more about that. And while I was there, I attended a conference called Into Christ Consciousness, which was talking about how the Christ, Jesus, came to earth and wanted to share with us the way. He said very clearly, he stated, all these things I can do and you can do too, and more, he stated. And so what he was trying to, what he was sharing with us was that we all have the ability to do all the things that he did and more. And if we live according to the way, which was the very simple rules, really, the 10 commandments plus one extra one that Jesus gave us, which was, as I have loved you, love one another. So if you think of the 11 commandments, that is the guideline that we have been given in order to fulfill this ideal future. And once you start living according to those guidelines, and very few people really do. Most people lie. I found myself lying even to my child last night, and I had to correct myself. But, he was asking me, he's 2.5, he didn't even know. But if it mattered, it didn't even matter really. But he asked me if one CD was on, and I said, yes, it was, but it wasn't. And it was a silly little thing. He wanted the one that he wanted on, but I had to correct myself and say it was a different one. So we do these silly little lies all the time. So it's actually very challenging to live the 10 commandments to their utmost fulfillment. But that's what I tried to begin doing. I also became very conscious of the Holy Mother, and I became reintroduced to Jesus again through her. I had felt that the religion that I was raised in was overly patriarchal, and so I learnt more about Medjugorje, Fatima, Garabandal, and I spent a lot of time reading the messages of our mother at these places, and what she's trying to tell us as well in the very important time, the vortex of transition that we're going through in 2011, 2012, which continues on to this day. There was a tipping point, a very, very important tipping point, and it was what a timeline was created when the September 11 terrorist attacks happened. And that was a very negative timeline that was created, and that had to be overridden, which it was, yay, by good energy. And a lot of people put a lot of effort into that on the 11th of 2011, the 11th of the 11th of 2011, and created a new positive, loving timeline for Mother Earth. But all of this incredible transitional stuff was going on for the planet and for me personally, and I began to learn more about energy. At the same time, I became sensitive to electromagnetic fields. For example, even still, I hate touching my Apple Macs, sorry Apple. All of the little remote controls, all of the mobile phones emit an electromagnetic field that is too strong, and certainly too strong for my body, and I could feel it. And in fact, it would burn my hands if I held it for longer than a minute or two. But then the burn, this sort of electromagnetic burn, would stay there for hours afterwards, and one of the only ways I could get rid of it was to wash my hands in living water over and over again. But that should give you an indication of how bad these things are. But so because I became sensitive to these fields, I started to naturally have to learn more about the physics of electromagnetic fields and understand how they worked within our body and within the natural environment. And so I learned a lot about light and biophotons and the electromagnetic fields or electromagnetic radiation, which is light, that is emitted by all natural objects and also by electrical objects. So wherever you have an electric current, you have an electromagnetic field which rotates around that current. And everything alive emits light, including us, out of our eyes, so don't ever wear sunglasses, and also out of our whole body and any plant, any living thing. Any living thing emits light. So what this means is that when we're around electromagnetic radiation that is of a different frequency to us, or a disharmonious frequency, it affects our body in a deleterious way, and it's negative on our body. And these were the sort of fields that I was beginning to feel. And so I became aware of this and eliminated Wi-Fi and tried to, that's one of the reasons why I also switched off my phone and sort of did that whole thing. But these fields I began to feel with more and more frequency, and I started to become interested in people who could navigate these fields. So I began to learn more about healing, because healers seem to be able to navigate these fields, so that I learned about John Chang from Indonesia and practitioners of Nai Kung. I also learned about Tai Chi, and then I began reading the biographies and biographies of famous healers, which of course included the New Testament again. So I went back and read the New Testament again, just purely for an energetic, electromagnetic healing perspective. And so I learned again about all of what Jesus was telling us. And I began to see links with all of this stuff. So healing is related to electromagnetic fields, is related to light, is related to energy, is related to attitude. There was the woman who touched Jesus's coat in the Bible, and he could feel the energy draining from his body, and he said, "Who touched me?" And everyone stood back and said, "It wasn't me, Master, it wasn't me." And then the lady put up her hand and acknowledged that she was the one who touched him. And he said, "Your faith has healed you." And so just by touching him, and he was aware, his energy got sucked out of him because her faith, took a little bit of his energy. So there's field operations going on here. There are biofields interacting. And then I became interested in the work of heart math, talking about the tube torus shape of our heart field. So the heart, every major organ in the body emits an electromagnetic field, the brain, etc. But the heart by far emits the largest electromagnetic field, and it is in the shape of a tube torus. So it goes out of your body like this, and it comes back in, down, underneath, like that, out and in, out and in. So you literally, whatever you're giving out, you literally get back. And this is in line with what all of the masters have told us. This is true of what Jesus told us and true of what all masters from all traditions have told us. That the primacy of the heart, the intelligence of the heart, and what you put out, you get back. And I began to meditate. I prayed a lot. I prayed for everyone, the whole world, tears pouring down my face. I was very worried about the world and where the world was, and I begged God to help people and to help the world, because most people didn't understand where we were and how important. It still makes me emotional talking about it, how important what that time was. So I spent a lot of time doing that. And then I began to have what happened, then I began to feel good energy, which was really a blessing. As I meditated and prayed, I began to feel the chi in my body coming out of my hands as I prayed over my children and in deeply spiritual times. And as I became so interested in healing, I then decided to make a trip across the world to Brazil to see Brazilian healer John of God to learn more about healing and indeed to heal myself, because if you're alive, you need help. So off I went to Brazil, and that was a profound and life-changing experience. I learned a lot about healing when I was there, and I was astonished at the ease and facility with which these incredible healings take place there every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of the week. And I began to tap into the energy. In fact, even before I left, I could feel the energy in my hands. I could just sort of switched on at 9:30 every night, which was about the same time that the Casa's current began in Brazil. And I remember just sitting on the sofa saying to my husband, oh my gosh, what is that energy in my hands? My hands are tingling. And I could feel it all the time that I was there and all the way when I came back, and now it's just a permanent feature of my life. And I can feel it generate when I pray. So the Kundalini, what you start to notice is that you start to notice things, I don't know, how can I describe it? It's intensely physical. You cry for humanity. You are in wonderment of humanity. And you start to feel and notice and experience these things, like little blue and white floating lights around you, plants literally communicating with you. Nature just it takes on this whole different realm. You can see, lights in trees and sacred geometry in trees. When I prayed, I began to hear angels singing and singing Amen with me when I'd finish my prayers and say Amen. These angels. What else? What else? I finally realized that it was Kundalini when one day I had this just incredible pressure in my heart, and I could feel the heart field around my body, just huge, massive, and it had just been building up and building up and building up. It was driving me crazy. It was just a physical thing, just like having a pin stuck in your head or something. Like, just this thing is driving me crazy. I've got to move it. And so I went outside and sat in the backyard and meditated, and I just really concentrated on moving the energy, and I moved it in a spiraling fashion, just taking my cue from nature, and bearing in mind all of this was happening to me without any kind of guidance. I was just doing my best. And so I moved the energy in this spiraling fashion, and it was amazing. After about half an hour, the energy shifted. I could feel it move up, and the relief and the pressure in my heart subsided, and I just felt so good, and I stood up, and I was so happy that it had changed. And I went inside and I said to John, it's great. That's my husband. It's moved, this is fantastic. And then about half an hour after that, I started to feel it in my neck. And I felt a bit nauseous, and I was like, uh-oh, I have moved it, but it's just moved to my neck. And so then I started Googling. I'd never even Googled before this, but then I was like, energy stuck in the neck, energy stuck in the neck. And all this stuff about Kundalini came up. And I went, isn't Kundalini some weird, tantric yoga thing? Or I had no idea what it was. And but then, now I do. So it turns out that Kundalini is the activation of latent energy in the body, which resides at the base of the spine and goes up through each, in a kind of dancing spiral motion, up through each chakra and cleanses it and clears it as it reaches its pinnacle at the crown. And this can happen all at once, or it can happen very slowly over a number of years, which is what's been happening with me, because concurrently with this process I've been having children. So the Kundalini in your body goes down again to create the child, then it comes back up again. For me, it came back up again when I finished breastfeeding. That is when it came back into activation in my body. So when that link with my child was ceased, then the Kundalini activated again. Pressure. So there are a lot of physical side effects that are Kundalini side effects. And Kundalini, she is a she, just as Jesus is a he, the Christ is a he. I like to sort of think of them as the divine masculine and the divine feminine. You need Jesus in your heart if you are going through Kundalini. If you are having problems, pray to Jesus and ask him to come and reside in your heart, because there is no way you can go through this process without the light of the Christ in your life. It is absolutely necessary. You cannot have this incredible, intense feminine energy, which is just sometimes that's what it feels like, without having the stabilizing factor of Jesus in your heart. So that is very important advice that I would give to anyone. The other piece of advice I would give is to exercise. It's the last thing a spiritual person actually feels like doing, especially if someone's into yoga. I would be easing back on the yoga unless it's yin yoga, and I would be running around the oval 10 times, because the body has to process this energy, and it is intense energy, and it sort of sends you a bit crazy because it is so strong. So doing something like running around your local oval 10 times, 20 times, you can actually wear the energy out, and I really recommend doing that, although it was the last thing I felt like doing as a new mother and also as somebody going through this spiritual stuff, but it stopped me from going crazy. It just wore me out, wore the energy out, and wore me out. So when the energy gets to your throat chakra, singing at the top of your lungs, not just toning, although that does help beautifully. Toning mantras is beautiful, but also singing, raising your frequency, because it's such it's like an emotional washing machine sometimes dealing with Kundalini. So it's really good to do things that raise your frequency, so things that make you happy, because it can be really intense. So facing all of these demons as it comes up through each chakra. Each chakra represents an emotional seat in your emotional psyche, and facing those things is just really, really intense. So you really have to go through a process of lifting your spirits. So singing your favorite songs at the top of your lungs is really important while you're running around that oval 10 times. For example, for me, it was The Best of Your Love by The Emotions. That song always makes me happy, and if I sing it at the top of my lungs, puts me in a good mood. Also dancing. Sometimes Shakti, she's feminine and she just wants to dance, and so I would find that I would have to find private time when I could just dance in my house, because it was another way, sometimes the only way. Like, she wanted to rhythmically dance, not just running around an oval, but to once again to shift the energy. So it is an ongoing process for me, and as I go through motherhood, Kundalini continues to traverse my life. I've had very interesting experiences as we're getting to the upper chakras, some of which I've blogged about. I won't go into them here, but needless to say, another one is like being incredibly dizzy. So I wasn't able to drive for about 4 months because I was so dizzy. I remember walking up to our local little shop, and I went down 2 steps, and I became so dizzy from going down 2 steps. Like, I had to laugh. It was hilarious, but I couldn't drive. I just became really dizzy. Even going around a corner, like going around 2 corners, my head was like, whoa, whoa. It was like I was drunk. I made I made the very bad mistake of catching a plane during this process, and was incredibly ungrounded and the most anxiety I've ever felt in my life. I had to cling on to my husband because it was as if my heart chakra was left back at the airport. It was awful. Do not catch a plane if you were going through the upper chakras. So that's all inner ear stuff, which all is apparently normal, but one of the fun side effects of this process. Now, my dad asked me if I could stop this process, and to me, I suppose that you could pray to God and ask God to stop the process. But I haven't felt that it is a bad process. I have felt that it is helping me evolve, and I've been very fortunate to be supported by the energy at the Casa de Dom Ignacio, where John of God lives and works. I've gone back there twice more. I now work with a crystal bed, so I spend time aligning myself and meditating. I also have had the blessing of having two little children during this process, so they have really grounded me. You can't ignore children. So they make you get outside, they make you laugh, they make you play, they make you just not be so serious. And so that's really helped me too. So I feel like I've been quite grounded, even though I still wanted to go a bit insane a few years ago. So that's where I am now. Kundalini, it is crazy, and if it happened to me, it can happen to you. Watch out. Bye.